Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm back with a new reaction. They put out a video named "Everything Found in P.Diddy's Mansion Rates 1,000 bottles of baby oil." Ooh, so I really want to see a little recap of everything the police found in Diddy's house. I be following a little bit the drama concerning him. I know there's a bunch of artists that is involved in all of that. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they found and what they're talking about and catch up a little bit because I've been following but not hard enough. So let's see what is given and let's react to it. Let's go.
Evidence federal investigators collected at the homes of P. Diddy leading up to his indictment. This includes things like guns, ammunition, electronic evidence, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and personal lubricant. To understand all this and how it relates to Diddy's case, we're hearing from former CIA officer and FBI agent Tracy Walden. I'm Sierra Gillespie, and this is Law and Crime News. Major news this week out of New York, where now disgraced rapper Sean P. Diddy Combs was arrested and taken into custody. On Monday, a grand jury indicted him on multiple federal charges, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Homeland Security took Diddy into custody at the Park Hyatt in New York. According to his legal team, Diddy's been in the city for the past week ahead of these anticipated charges. So Diddy may have had a heads up that these charges were on the way, but it wasn't a complete surprise to the rest of us either. Federal investigators issued search warrants on 2 of Diddy's homes this spring, and that's when experts told us it's not if, but when Diddy will be arrested. We couldn't confirm then that Diddy was the target of the search, but we had a good idea what investigators were looking for: electronic evidence of alleged illegal acts like sexual assault or racketeering.
Okay, so they knew that he was going to be arrested. They just wanted more evidence to do it.
Date back to November of last year, when Cassandra Ventura, known publicly as the singer Cassie, filed civil suit against Diddy. She laid out some major claims against him, saying over the course of their relationship, Diddy physically and emotionally abused her, forced her to carry illegal weapons, and even made her have sex with prostitutes. The lawsuit was settled outside of court just one day after it was filed, but it was just the start of the wave of lawsuits that Diddy would face. Over the next few months, multiple other accusers came forward with civil suits alleging Diddy's pattern of sexual abuse dated back as far as the 1990s. A civil suit filed by Rodney Jones, also known as the producer Lil Rod, brings these acts.
As they say, you just need one person to be brave enough to sue, and you're just saying everybody is going to follow. That one person.
Into 2024. According to Lil Rod's lengthy suit, Diddy is the kingpin in a gun trafficking, drug trafficking, and sex trafficking scheme. Lil Rod also accused Diddy of sexual assault and echoed Cassie's allegation that Diddy forced him to have sex with a prostitute. Lil Rod's lawsuit includes something else that may have piqued the Fed's interest. He alleges there are hundreds of hours of video and audio recordings of Diddy's illegal behavior. We now know this is what the feds were searching for on March 25th, when they executed search warrants at Diddy's homes in Los Angeles and Miami. At the time, we only speculated that investigators collected electronic evidence, but now we know for sure. According to the indictment against Diddy, investigators seized more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant from his home. The court doc states these items were used in something referred to as freak-offs, which were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded.
What? Why are you doing all that? Now that's really weird, because a normal person would not have 1,000 bottles of lubricant and baby oil. Come on now. If you say, oh, but that's lubricant, it is using it when you're having sexual intercourse with his woman. No, 1,000 bottles? Come on now.
In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. So Diddy's business employees allegedly facilitated these freak-offs by stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate room damage, arranging for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs, resupplying Combs with the requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. So these items were collected during the federal raids, including narcotics and hundreds of bottles of lube and baby oil. There were also electronic files of these freak-offs, and the feds collected those too. In addition to all this, investigators seized AR-15 guns, ammunition, and a large capacity drum magazine from Diddy's home. Since those raids in March, federal prosecutors have been crafting their case against Diddy, which led to grand jury proceedings against him. So he was indicted on Monday and taken into custody, and on Tuesday, that indictment was unsealed. Also on Tuesday, Diddy appeared in federal court where he pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. During the hearing, Diddy was also denied bail, a federal judge ruling he must remain in custody until trial. With all that in mind, let's take a closer look at what exactly the feds collected from Diddy's homes. For that, we turn to former CIA officer and FBI agent Tracy Walder. This indictment that just came down, I know we were kind of expecting it to happen, but when it did, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I had expected, I'd said before that I thought we'd get an indictment within 6 to 9 months. People weren't happy with me because they thought that was just too long. But it was almost exactly 6 months, actually, since the warrants were served on both of his homes. I think it's not a surprise to me because I'm glad he's being charged with this. I wholeheartedly thought that he would have a RICO, a racketeering charge. I knew that would be something that they would get him on. I was concerned that they wouldn't get him on human trafficking because sometimes that can be really difficult to prove. And I just always worry that those cases fall through the cracks and then justice isn't served for the victims. And so I was pleased to see that he was charged with that, so that hopefully he could be held accountable.
Much of the evidence that the prosecution now has against Diddy came from the federal raids. Talking about a federal search warrant, what does that look like, just generically?
Right, so in this case, and I don't recall if I talked to you about this or maybe Jesse, but when that warrant was served back in March, the question is if they served the warrant, why can't they just arrest him? And again, as you mentioned, they probably didn't have enough evidence at that time to do so. However, to get a warrant like that where it's served simultaneously and in a surprising manner, they really had to prove one of two things. The first being that evidence was imminently going to be destroyed, or that the lives of people were in danger. I believe that it was the former that they were probably able to prove, is that evidence may have been going to be destroyed, and that's why they served the warrants, and that's why they were able to serve the warrants, to preserve that evidence.
I feel like a lot of us who don't have experience in the FBI or CIA, we just picture movies or TV shows when you see people come in and opening drawers and closets and going through everything. But what does it really look like when they're there on the ground serving these federal warrants?
Yeah, I mean, in a case like this, obviously you're not making any kind of a dynamic entry. This isn't a hostage situation, right? Where that's not what's happening here. However, they did know that there would be weapons there, armed security, those kinds of things. That's why you saw those warrants being served by, for the most part, a tactical SWAT team. Simply, that is procedure to keep everyone safe. A lot of people were frustrated when they saw the video that came out of the warrant, that his home was, in, I guess, disarray. But again, and I had said this before, my gut said they were looking for digital evidence, which is in that indictment. There's a lot of mentions to digital evidence. And that's why they tore up couch cushions. That's why they made holes in walls. They were looking for flash drives, tiny devices, where these things were stored. And so all of that is done methodically. It's all cataloged. And in a case like this, where you're not necessarily rushing, to put out a fire or something like that, it was all done in a very methodical way. You typically go through room by room to catalog all of that evidence. evidence.
Taking a closer look at all that evidence, Diddy had 3 AR-15s seized during the federal raids that had been defaced. What do you think that would look like, though? Because weapons obviously are very dangerous. We don't want them to go off. How is that collected?
Well, they typically clear the weapon, right? They're going to go ahead and take the cartridge out of it and make sure that there are no rounds, obviously, in the chamber, and then disassemble it to be taken back as evidence. What's interesting is the AR-15s that they found. Some people have AR-15s. It's legal in some places, but they found that the serial number was scraped off of them, and that I thought was interesting because I don't know if Diddy didn't want those traceable to him or if he had received them on the black market.
You know what's interesting is that we just recently, in the second attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, we saw those federal charges for tampering with the weapon, where he, the alleged attempted assassin, scraped off or made not legible the serial number. So why is it that Diddy might not have received charges like that?
So in terms of Mr. Ralph, that's the individual currently charged, and that I believe those are just simply placeholder charges. If you want me to be honest with you, I don't think they're really going to move forward with those. I think they're going to go with much larger charges, but they haven't had the element of time, right, that they've had with Diddy. They arrested him immediately after, 45 minutes after this attempt, and so they did what they could with what they had at that particular moment in time to keep him in custody. And so I think that's why you didn't see those with Diddy. These are much larger charges with Diddy. They don't need those kind of placeholder charges to keep him in jail until they can get more. So that's why I think you don't see those.
As far as the AR-15s, ammunition, I know that they mentioned a drum magazine as well. Where are those stored now? Where does all of that go?
What is a drum magazine? What is drum magazine? I don't know what it is though, but yeah.
Basis, it's all labeled based on a case.
Another thing that was collected during all of this is narcotics. So there are illegal drugs like meth and also prescription drugs too. I'm wondering if federal investigators are going to look and track down who provided these to Diddy. Where was the source for these prescription or other street drugs that were in the homes?
You know, I think that that's a possibility, especially based on what we saw with Matthew Perry and the ketamine queen and the doctors and all the other, I think, 5 individuals who were ultimately charged in that. They may be going on different sort of avenues in terms of charging. I don't think they're done in terms of charging. And I do think with this recent crackdown on this, that they very well may go after those individuals, whomever the suppliers were.
Another thing that everyone seems to be talking about from this indictment is the 1,000 bottles of baby oil and personal lubricant that were collected between Diddy's 2 homes. This one really stood out to me.
It's so crazy for me.
I guess, what do you just make of that?
I don't know a way to say this. Based on what was in the indictment regarding these freak-offs that's what they call them in here. I think that's what Diddy called them, quite frankly. The severity at which they were, the length and duration at which they were, I'm actually not surprised that that's what was collected ultimately from his home. It's absolutely horrific. The fact that some of these victims needed IV rehydration afterwards, couldn't go out because they were so injured as a result of this. It's absolutely horrific. And now, based on what we've learned of the magnitude of those freak-offs, it's unfortunately not surprising.
What would it look like for investigators to go through and, I guess, document everything that they have as far as the electronic evidence while maintaining the anonymity of the survivors, I guess?
Right, and I think that's why in the indictment you really don't hear much mention of victims. For those who have read it, there's victim 1 that is mentioned in it, but there are no names that are mentioned, and I believe that that's done on purpose. The prosecution wants to have a rapport with these victims to continue to get information from them, and we don't want to re-victimize them. No one deserves that, and so I think doing this in an anonymous way is what we should be doing with these victims. But I think part of the issue, part of what took some time actually in terms of going through all of this, as you mentioned, there was video evidence of these freak-offs. You have to go through now and identify everyone who is in those videos, and that really can take some time. It's a very tedious task. I don't know that they were able to identify every single person that appeared in these videos, but I am certain that they were able to identify some of them, and those are the interviews that they did, and that's what ultimately led to an indictment.
These are some of the major things that people are talking about because they were mentioned in the indictment. But is it possible that the feds collected even more information that we don't know about yet? It may come out at trial.
100%, I'm certain of it. I think someone said, oh, this is a big indictment, 14 pages. In my opinion, it's actually not that big. I've seen bigger indictments, which in my opinion also leads me to believe that all of the evidence is not included in it. And they're entitled to do that. If you actually look at the Brian Kohberger case, they didn't include all the evidence.
So we still have more stuff that's going to pop out?
Defense, obviously.
Damn.
But it doesn't need to necessarily be in the indictment. You only need to put in the information that led to it. And so my guess is they have more. They just didn't put it all in there.
Then there's the time frame to consider, from the raids in March all the way to the grand jury and indictment in September. So that's 6 months of. Following Diddy's indictment on Monday, he pleaded not guilty to charges on Tuesday. A statement from his legal team reads, quote, Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children, and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person, but is not criminal. To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with this investigation, and he voluntarily relocated to New York last week in anticipation of these charges. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court. For more Diddy content and
really explain everything that was new about the situation. If he's guilty, I hope that he will face the great amount to pay what he did to all those victims. I really said if he's guilty. If he was not, well, we'll know about it. We'll just see. And then we'll see at the end what is coming out from that. But yeah, that was my reaction to this. My opinion about all of this is like, you have all the money in the world and you always want to do some bullshit to ruin your life at the end of it. That's crazy. But yeah, I'll end on this. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the video. Follow all my social media. It will be down below in the description. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.